is silly, but yeah, we'll try. Starting small. We choose the space in our landscapes. Sometimes we work with our neighbors. You know, they've got a sunny spot in their yard they're not using. Can we share it out? Can I go there and plant a garden in your yard? Work with your neighbors. I did a landscape consultation yesterday for a couple, and we went over. We knocked on the neighbor's door and said, "We'd like to plant a tree in your yard. We'll pay for it. Not me, but they will. But they need shade on their house, and it needs to go right over there." He's like, "Sure." So work with your neighbors, and share some of the produce. One of my favorite books that I encourage you to check out is called Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew. The original Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew. I had the pleasure. This is a book that, when I first started getting into this and educating myself on gardening, this is the book that, when I finally got around to reading the first chapter, not passing through all the pretty pictures in the back of the books, on soil preparation, it was like, I can do that. That's easy. And I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Bartholomew several years ago and said, "This book is great." It took the rocket surgery, I was quoting the president there, it took the rocket science out of gardening. It's simple. Just repeat step A, B, C, and repeat it. A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. Keep it simple, repeat it over and over. Compost, compost, compost. Keep adding compost. My garden is 15 years old. I don't till. The only time I till is when I plant something. I never pull anything out, I cut it off. Let the roots break down and decompose, feed the earthworms. But in the first, and again, like I said, there are two different Square Foot Gardenings. They are republishing now. The first Square Foot Gardening is the most widely published book, a garden book of all time. They're now re-releasing it yet again. So we can now find again the very first Square Foot Gardening. But you don't need to buy it out. Go to your local library, check it out, the first couple chapters on soil preparation, read it, learn it, live it. I'm going to slide right back. The book you do need to own, by Becky Garrett, Texas Organic Vegetable Gardening. This one here, which you shall purchase and own. I'm on my 4th copy of this book. So that's where I'm at. When it gets to a certain point, this is the one that goes out in the garden, stays in my bucket in the garden. And then I buy a new one for inside the house. So this is the one you need to own. This one breaks it down. Again, the same principles, all the same wonderful stuff that's in Mel's book is kind of in here, but the way he verbalizes it, the way he puts it, again, it's sweet. And I really do recommend reading those first couple chapters on soil preparation and Square Foot Gardening. But one of the other little tricks from Mel's book, 2 4-foot by 8-foot squares, about twice the size of this table, 2 4 by 8 boxes, can feed a family of 4 and keep your neighbors happy. It doesn't take a whole lot of space to grow a good crop of veggies. And you're talking about variety. If you can get 60 pounds of tomatoes off of a tomato plant, how many tomatoes do you need to grow? 47. So, obviously, well, 120, probably. But, so your variety is the spice of life that way. So you want to have room for, and it breaks it down and kind of tells you how much space a plant takes at maturity. And there are aspects of the square foot method that are kind of fun, but you don't have to live and die by them. But let's just say that we get like a whiskey barrel, or some of your nurseries you can get a 15-gallon pot, 15, 20-gallon size pot to garden in. Well, you can grow 4 different plants in that space. You can put a big cage around it. Your tomato comes up. You can have some bush beans on it. You can have a couple onions in it. You can have a basil plant. You can have a bunch of stuff going on in that space. And especially if you're doing little crops that finish very quickly. If you're doing lettuces and things like that have a 30, 45-day shelf life. They're from seed to harvest. You've got a lot going on in that space that you're harvesting as that tomato plant really takes off and matures. Or you have a tomato and a pepper. And again, it's just a matter of remembering to feed them, because they're all competing for that same food in that space. So small spaces can produce a lot. And grow that which you will eat. Don't grow squash if you don't eat squash. Pretty simple rule. Why put the effort into it unless you like it? And there are a lot of really pretty things. I like pole beans. I like pole beans. I eat just as many flowers off of pole beans as I do, and that's why I don't get as many beans, because I can always eat the flowers off of them. So there's the edible ornamental crops that way. Soil preparation. So we've chosen a spot. We want to have a good sunny spot, as much as we possibly can. Building raised beds. for those of us here in the hill country, our hard clay soil or lack thereof on top of rocks, raised beds is cheating. It's basically making a big container on top of the ground. It's the way to go. My beds, when I first constructed them, I used the least expensive wall or support mechanism you could possibly consider, to the point that that's gone, and I now use the least expensive possible soil, which is none. And it's just, my soil is about 8 to 10 inches deep. I put 3 inches of compost on top of it every springtime and let that decompose. And on the sides of these little berms, if you will, I plant bush beans, and I have a little crop that's on that west side, and kind of goes from west to east and taller stuff towards the back. So you don't really have to have retaining walls. Sometimes it just makes it a little easier, and I can appreciate that too. I like cedar posts. Rock is top of the line. Rock is great. Rock is expensive. Not because the rock costs money, it costs money to move the rock. So rocks are cheap, just picking them up and moving them. But once you put them there, they last for a while. Cedar posts are great. Any type of, just kind of format in here, it doesn't have to be square. But again, keeping it 4 feet at the most, that way you can reach the garden without ever getting into it. What's the worst thing you can put in your garden? Feet. Best thing, your shadow, right? So, again, concentrating your efforts on a small number of space. So, improving the soil. The best way to improve the soil is to buy good soil. Gotta figure out where you're gonna go. You're gonna go get you're gonna go purchase some soil at Stone Soil Depot here in Bulverde. Other folks might know other places, other materials yards. I'm not promoting any particular materials yard. New York does a pretty darn good job with their soil blends and things like that. I used to work for Fertile Garden Supply, which is in the far northwest San Antonio. They used to have the best soil as far as buying a soil blend. If you're buying packaged products, the Ladybug, I don't think anything better than anything better than anything with a Ladybug label on it is going to be your top of the line. And again, when you first purchase garden soil, it's like buying raw oatmeal. And so, yes, it can sustain life, but it's raw oatmeal. We need to add a little bit of brown sugar to it in the form of molasses. We need to add a little bit of lava sand. We like to add a little bit of green sand. We like to add a little bit of fertilizer to add to it. There are all these other little tweaks that will go into preparing the soil for planting. And probably the first one that I'd like to encourage you to really think about that way are the rock powders, the rock minerals like lava sand. Gardenville people make a blend called Vulcanite. Give you just a quick 30 seconds on Vulcanite here. I'll try to make it as quick as I can. Whenever Malcolm comes out with something brand new, I'm going to try it. I have 1,000 feet of raised beds. It says 40 to 80 pounds per thousand. I got a bag 4 times. So I just kind of liberally dusted it over just about everything and saved a little bit for a little side-by-side test. I love doing side-by-side tests. So I had some purple coneflowers that I had in the greenhouse, and I was taking them out. And I said, well, there's a good idea. So I took 2 rows of 12 that were breaking dormancy. Some of them were just pipping maybe 1/2 inch on the top of the pot. Some of them were about 2 inches on the top of the pot. So I made 2